Hello, good evening from Ohio. It's your good buddy Spider once again with another great episode of your favorite podcast or radio show that starts with Let's Talk About. That joke never gets old for me because I know where it came from and some of you might not. But yes, it's me from Ohio, your good buddy Spider, once again, repeating myself. And things are doing pretty good here for the most part. I mean, you guys know as of last Monday, we were in some down in the dumps a little bit. And still, that situation takes time to get over, and that's okay. You never have to rush through the grieving process. But I've done some other things in the meantime. As of this broadcast, if you're listening to it live, then this will be accurate. Last Wednesday, I was on the Musicians Hangout show, which was the best thing to come out of the old Let's Talk About whatever. Other than this, of course. I mean, we're both pretty good. And I talked about a lot of different things. Go to their YouTube, Musicians Hangout, and look for your good buddy Spider, and you can watch the interview for yourselves. I had a good time. Everybody had a good time. It's all good times. And that brings us to tonight. Now, last Monday, I asked the age-old question, where's the beef? And we talked about commercials, mostly that I remembered as a child growing up. And this week, what's that smell? Let's talk about this. That's right, what's that smell? And I'm not going to try to have you guess what some random smell in my house is. It's not a game show. I got to thinking how interesting it is that so much of what we do on a day-to-day basis revolves around our noses. You know what I mean? We rely on our sense of smell for a lot of things. To tell us when there's food nearby, to tell us when there's dangers nearby sometimes, and just to tell us that there's, oh man, I don't know what that is, but I don't like it. Or maybe I do. And it kind of sucks when you get to some kind of, like, you have a cold or you have something that messes with your sense of smell. And I was telling my daughter earlier, when I was telling her what show I was going to do tonight. I was telling her, and this might be news to you, and if it isn't, well then just listen anyway. That's what you're here for. Your sense of smell and your sense of taste are linked. And a lot of times, some things will taste like what they smell like, and some things won't. And sometimes you'll feel really weirded out because something that smells really delicious, you'll taste it and be like, oh, this is not at all what I thought it was going to be based on smelling it. And other things are like, oh, this is even better than it smelled. Oh my gosh. And when you lose the ability to feel one or the other due to some circumstances, then it makes things pretty difficult and kind of unpleasant in life. Like, for example, and this is not a show where we get into big hot button, big topic things, so I'm only going to touch on this really briefly in super general terms, and I don't want anybody to come in and try to get into an argument and say that we should talk more deeply about it, because we're not gonna. Okay? I'm not going to get into it. Alright? I'm just going to mention that one of the symptoms from the virus years that we had between 20 and 23. And I know there's still people out there catching it. You don't have to come on and be like, it hasn't gone away, don't downplay it. We're not talking about it. Okay? I'm not talking about it. I'm just touching on this briefly. One of the symptoms originally was that a lot of people lost their sense of taste or their sense of smell, sometimes both. because they're linked, right? The two things are linked, your sense of taste and sense of smell. And a lot of times if you lost one, you lost the other. And it was really difficult for people. And I didn't really have that. I didn't have that exact symptom. I had, once in a while, I had a couple of things that would come up where things tasted weird. Or they tasted dulled or something, or my smell. But most of the time, if I can't smell something, it's my nose is stuffy. And you can't smell anything anyway if your nose is stuffy. All you smell is your nose drainage. But I had this thing happen. And I thought it was due to the virus. But I found out it was something else. And I'll get to that in a minute because this is a real interesting story. I was going through, and it was just coincidental that it came, and maybe the virus stuff aggravated this. I don't know how it could, but I don't know every little thing about anatomy. I know enough basics to get by. I know some good biology, and I know the elementary school stuff, and I can get through. But when all the virusy stuff was going around, real heavy, and we were mostly restricted to houses, and everybody pretty much caught it. Sooner or later, you've all caught it. I know there's still people out there saying, I don't think I ever got it. You probably did, and maybe you just never had any heavy symptoms of it. Everybody's had a version of the virus by now, regardless of what protections you took. It's just how it is. It's just how viruses work. And there were times... The most famous, there was one famous thing. I don't mean famous like everybody in the world knows about it, and it's like, oh man, it's just infamous in my home, I suppose. And the thing that stood out the most was the peanut butter. Now we get this like organic, it's name brand peanut butter. It's not like some weird off-brand or something. I don't want to say weird off-brand as if like that's necessarily a bad thing, because the generic brands can be just as good as anything else. But it was a name brand. And they do, I don't know what that cat wants, but they do this organic peanut butter that's got less ingredients in it, but still peanut butter. And it sometimes has like oil separation, and you have to oil it, or not. You don't have to oil it; you have to stir it up, right? Because the peanuts and the peanut oil kind of separate a little bit. And it sounds gross, I know, but it's not. It's not that gross. It's not gross. So. But that's the kind of peanut butter we get. But it's name brand, and I'd never had any issues with it before. And then all of a sudden, I had a case where I opened one up. I was getting peanut butter either for somebody in the house's sandwich, or maybe I was just going to take a big old spoonful out of it. I don't know. Go back to my peanut butter show if you want to know about that. But I opened it up, and I caught a whiff of something that didn't quite smell right. So I took a deep smell of it, like, just like a certain wrestler, a certain pro wrestler turned movie star. And I took a deep smell of it, and it didn't smell like peanut butter. It smelled like cat pee. And people out there have been like, oh, why are we talking about this? I'm just saying that's what it smelled like. And that I have cats, yes, but no cats have ever been in that cupboard. Needless to say, they have never pried off the lid of the peanut butter and peed in my peanut butter. It's never happened. It has never happened. It's not a thing that happened. So I was kind of like, well, that's so weird. It's because it smells like this ammonia smell. This, like, anybody who has cats or who's been around cats knows that when they pee, they have that ammonia smell, right? And I couldn't get rid of it. It just, it drove me crazy because I like peanut butter. I like the smell of peanut butter. I like the taste of peanut butter. And it doesn't happen very often anymore. Once in a while, but not often. And I thought it was due to the virus thing messing with my nose, right? But I had something else going on at the same time. I would be sitting in my chair that I always sit at, and I would smell some kind of burning electrical smell, like a burning electrical smell. And I checked every outlet, I checked every plug, I checked every electrical thing nearby me, and nothing was giving off the smell. But I was smelling it. And at the same time, I tasted metal. The sort of taste like if you, as a kid, you've put a penny in your mouth. I don't recommend doing that because you know how often money has changed hands in the public. And unless you scrub it clean every time you get it, you don't want to put money in your mouth. Don't do it, please. Don't do it and then let it go and then spend it either, because that's really gross. But that's the taste of like a copper penny or like a nickel or something like that, right? The taste of that kind of metal, I would just taste it in my mouth. And I didn't know why. Sometimes it'd be with the alcohol I was drinking, and I would think maybe that's what the problem is. Maybe I'm drinking too much alcohol in this sitting. But it would just strike randomly, right? Now, here's a fun fact. Remember I said that your sense of taste and your sense of smell are linked? Well, at the time, I was using a particular kind of deodorant stick. Okay? I was using a particular kind. And I didn't make a connection then. But at some point later on, I had to switch deodorants for something. And whatever. But I went back to the same one I'd had at the time, after some amount of time. And the metal tasting thing started to happen again because, and I noticed it was stronger in my mouth when I was smelling this deodorant on my skin. Somehow the way it reacted with my skin, it didn't give me like an allergic reaction, it didn't give me anything like that. But when you put the two things together, the smell of it seeped from into my nostrils, down in my mouth. I mean, that sounds really gross. I'm not eating deodorant. I'm not eating Tide Pods or anything like that. Like, please don't sue me, makers of Tide. Fine products. But I would taste that metal taste because something that my nose was picking up was translating into my taste buds, and I would taste that metal taste. So there's an interesting factoid for you. If you wonder, if you start just randomly having weird taste in your mouth, examine what you're smelling on a regular basis, because it could be something that smells in your house. This is science. This is science experiments we're doing right now. You and me. Everybody out there, you and me, we're doing science experiments. And, so yeah, I had that issue. But getting back to a more general topic about smells. We smell a lot of things in our day-to-day lives. Like me, I have pet smells, of course. I've got the cats. And one of the things that's helpful to me is I recognize patterns. Okay, I recognize patterns. And one of the things that I've noticed over time is that if one of my cats gets sick with something, it doesn't necessarily mean it's something real serious, but if they get sick with maybe a bad tooth, or they have an infection, or they get a cold or something, they have a particular smell to their breath, right? It doesn't smell like cat food or just stinky pet breath smell. It has a particular smell. And because I smelled it more than once, I've come to notice it and come to, like, every once in a while I'll check, I'll be like, hey, cat, come here, you're acting kind of funny, let me smell your breath. And people out there are probably like, don't go around smelling your cat's breath. Well, it's helpful. When I smell it, I know, oh, you know what, maybe there's something going on with you. I'll take extra good care of you. I'll make sure you're eating good and your water's clean and all this stuff. And generally it clears up. Sometimes in the past it hasn't, unfortunately, and it's been a serious infection or something, but at least I've known and I've taken steps to try to help before it got to an issue that couldn't be solved, But it's something helpful. And so there's a lot of things like that you can do in your life. You can get used to certain smells, and you can identify them for certain health things. Dogs have been known, from what I've read, to be able to smell like certain forms of cancers and things, which is really, really interesting. It's really smart. And I don't know how they do it. I know dogs are used to smell for things in security places and airports and by police, and they can smell explosives, and they can smell substances that you're not supposed to have, and that kind of thing. And that's real handy. I don't know if people can do that. There's a lot of things that people don't have the same kind of noses like a dog does, though. You know what I mean? We don't smell that kind of stuff. We have certain kind of smells, like you can drive past a Burger King. Please don't sue me, Burger King, for using your name and likeness. That's going to be a running joke now. But you can go past like a burger restaurant, and you can smell it outside. And if you're into that kind of food, your brain is like, oh, I smell something good. And sometimes you'll go through like parts of stores and you'll smell something like, oh, that's no good. Like some stores have an area where all of their fish is kept, and some places have fresh fish and some places have frozen fish and both and whatnot. And sometimes if a place is not taking care of their supplies very well, you get pretty fishy smells. You don't want to smell fish like that. Yuck. But yeah, and then some smells cause reactions in other people that are explosive. And you know where I'm going with this. There's times when you just get an upset stomach, you just, oh, there's nothing much I can do. You go upstairs and you have to throw up, right? If somebody is around to smell it, then they have to throw up. And if somebody else comes along and smells that, then they have to throw up. And pretty soon you've got a whole house full of people all throwing up because one person smelled it and then the next person smelled it, right? As a kid, we were always fond of the "he who smelt it dealt it" joke. I'm not going to get too into that because I don't want to give modern kids any ideas. I'm sure that kind of humor is still around in public school, though. He who smelt it dealt it. That's a good way of trying to, like, cover up if you've done something you weren't supposed to. But, I mean, it's a biological function. It's not like you can... You gotta let things out, right? You gotta let things out. But there's ways to be discreet in public and not offend sensibilities, I guess. And one of the things I do, if you are grown up, if you are a grown up listening to this show, and you are listening, and you watch my YouTube channel, which is where these episodes go after the fact as well. If you watch that, you know I do my drink tastings, right? And I always smell them first to see what kind of scents I get out of it, because that'll help inform what I'm going to taste a little bit. But I'm always kind of like, I don't quite get how some people, because there's these famous sniffers. There's a guy in the UK, I think, somewhere in Europe, and his nose is insured for like $2 million. If something happens to his nose, he gets $2 million worth of insurance to fix it. Because he has the best sense of smell when it comes to certain drinks in the world. Okay? And you might think, what? Why? What does that matter? And it's just, I don't know. I'm not that deep into that culture about it. I mean, I take my sniffs and I do my tastings and whatnot, but I'm not going to insure my nose. I don't have that good of a sense of smell. But some of these people, they can swirl around the glass and they can smell, oh, I smell poppy seeds and a bright summer orchard with baked bacon grease and falafel. And I'm like, I don't smell any of that. I just smell a bunch of alcohol. Oh, I can smell some peaches. It smells a little bit like peaches. I don't know. But I always have to laugh when people come up with these descriptions because I can't smell things like that. I think I smell pretty well, but I can't smell like that. And there's some smells that are really distinctive. Like if you go to the gas station, you know the smell of gasoline. You know that. So a lot of people know the smell of kerosene. Pardon me. And certain foods, we know what foods we're gonna like probably because they smell good. But sometimes it's deceptive. Sometimes you can smell something. Oh, that smells delicious. And then you find out it's something like, oh, man, that's not good at all. I don't want to eat that. Or just you take a taste and you're like, this is not at all what I was expecting. And that does happen sometimes. There's a fruit in Asia, the durian fruit. It's a big, it's like the size of a melon. And it stinks. It is one of the worst smelling fruits in existence. But apparently it tastes really good. And I don't know how you'd be able to get to the taste portion if you just couldn't stand smelling it. You know, maybe you just close your nose and you take a bite. But then there's also, and this hasn't exactly worked for me. I've tried this a few times. They say if you plug your nose and then eat something, you won't be able to taste it. Because, of course, your sense of smell and your sense of taste are connected. But it doesn't work for me. They must not be that connected, or they're connected in a weird backwards way that makes me smell cat pee and peanut butter and metal from my deodorant. I don't know. But that's what they say. So, I mean, you can do a test like that with the durian fruit if you ever get one. But yeah, the way things smell, it's super interesting, and the animal world is super well developed for smells. You have like rodents who can smell food, so they get into your house and they raid your cupboards. You have big predators that can smell things like leopards and jaguars and things, and they got great senses of smell, and lions and wolves. Wolves can smell things. And you have insects. Insects do this too. Insects don't have noses, for the most part, though. Insects have scent glands and sensory things on like their legs and antenna. It's super interesting. It's all different in the insect world. But they spread around scents and smells. Like ants will do this. Ants will spread around scents and smells to tell other ants, hey, you know what, this is where the food is. And then they'll lead a trail of that back to their ant colony, and then next thing you know, you've got a swarm of ants in your house. And so it's just interesting how creatures use the sense of smell as opposed to how people do it. Because I can't imagine trying to smell things with my legs. Like, can you imagine that? I can't imagine that. I can't even begin to think about that. There's a disorder. There's a brain disorder that exists. It's called synesthesia. All right, and this is super interesting. It's super interesting to me. It scrambles the way your senses are perceived in your brain. Right? So the only one that doesn't seem to do so much is your sense of sight. Sight seems to be fine. But your smell and your taste and touch can all be affected. And what that means is you could taste colors. Right? You'd be like, oh, well, this tastes red, or this tastes green, or this tastes purple. And you might be thinking in your head, oh, well, that's probably, like cherry, or green beans, or grapes. But that's not what it's like. It's just your brain will tell you you'll taste something, and your brain will be like, oh, yeah, that's purple. It won't associate it with a particular actual, taste that you could identify as a food item. And you can hear creaminess. or you can hear savoriness. Or when you can touch something that stinks. You touch something and like, oh, that really smells bad. You know what I mean? It sounds crazy, doesn't it? But that happens sometimes. Synesthesia. It's super interesting. I've never met somebody that had it. And I've never had it myself that I know of. I don't remember a time where things were that wacky for me in my life. But it can happen. Your brain gets kind of scrambled a little bit. I'm not sure what the circumstances are behind you experiencing something like that. Instead of seeing color, you hear color, or you taste color. Instead of smelling a rose, you touch rosiness, and you touch stinkiness, or you touch the taste of gravy. You know? It's just weird. And you wouldn't think that things would work out that way, but it does. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you about that. I have a pretty decent sense of smell. It's not perfect, but I can. Right now I'm a bit stuffy. I've had like a cold for a little while, I think. Some kind of nose thing. Nothing real serious, just it's kept me kind of stuffy lately. So if I'm going kind of snuffly, then that's why. Most of the time, I think I have a pretty good sense of smell, because I'll sometimes pick up on things. I'll smell something, and I'm like, what is that? What is that? And I'll wander around the house looking, smelling things. Like when I was smelling burning electrical something or other, and it ended up being just my nose was messed up. But I went all over to sniff everything. And I have had things actually burn out in the house. We've had electrical problems in the house off and on. And I've had times where something went bad and I was like, well, let me smell it. And if it smells like, oh, that smells like burnt electrical wires, well, that's probably toast. Or at least unsafe. And not like toast like you'd get in the toaster, but you know what I mean. I don't want people to take me literally on absolutely every single thing. But I have a good nose for food. I can smell savory foods really good. Really well. I can smell things from a pretty good distance too. Like when I go to the grocery store, there's a whole line of restaurants across the parking lot from where all the stores are. And it's a big parking lot, and I usually park in between. But I park in the middle of this parking lot, and I get out, and sometimes you just, on a good day, you just take a whiff, and you can smell all those restaurants, all those foods. A lot of them are steakhouses and things, and you can smell all that, and just unless, of course, you're a vegetarian, and then that's disgusting, and that is fair. I'm not going to yell at you about it. Everybody can eat whatever they want to eat. But yeah, I smell it pretty good, and I don't know if it's just the way the wind is and it carries it or what it is. It's like those old cartoons where it's like a ghostly hand of smells just coming and just grabbing your nose and just and pulling you along. But yeah, what's that smell? And because my cats sometimes get angry with me for different things, like if their food dish isn't as full as they would like, or if their litter box is not quite as clean as they would prefer, then they make their displeasure known by finding a random spot in the house and going to the bathroom. It's not all the time every day, so I don't have this horde of like cat poos to clean up every single day. But every once in a while, I'll just be like, oh, you guys have got to be kidding me. And I'll have to find something to clean it up. And you know, and it stinks. These cats are stinkers. Let me tell you, they are stinkers. But that's how it goes. What's that smell? Have you smelled anything particularly interesting in your life? What's your favorite smell? What's your least favorite smell? Are you surprised and kind of appalled that I'm asking? Who cares? Send me a story about it in an email at uncannyspiritsclub@gmail.com. Nobody ever emails me. What's wrong, folks? You can send me your stories. I'm not going to embarrass you. If you don't want me to say your name, I won't. I'll say this is from an anonymous emailer, and they write, and then I would say what it was on the show. It's all good. I'm not going to embarrass you. I'm not going to send you spam messages back. Don't worry. Go ahead. Tell me your stories. Go back to all the old shows. Seasons 1, 2, and 3. And tell me. Ask me some questions. Tell me some stories. I want to know about it. I can be discreet if you like. It's up to you. Okay? It is up to you. But that's it. That's all I got for tonight. This was episode 45, so we're about a third. No, we're a quarter. We're a quarter of the way through season 3. A quarter of the way through season 3. Still a long ways to go, so don't worry. Hope you're enjoying what you're listening to, and I will catch you folks next week. What's that smell?